Welcome to episode 2. Before we dive in, I want to give a special thanks to my dear patron, Paul Lukasik, who sent me an incredible Zeppelin gift, a stunning set of concert photos I'll be revealing in future episodes. Guess what the Zeppelin year is for these. He also sent 2 replica tickets, including this one for Oakland, July 23rd. Paul, your generosity speaks volumes and brings this concert to life. Now, let's dive deep into the story. Robert Plant bid the audience farewell after the final encore, a rare performance of Black Dog, only the 4th time the song was played on the entire tour. He was in festival mood and even took a backstage picture with promoter Bill Graham's son, David. You can spot the same wooden backdrop on this Santana clip earlier in July. Performing in daylight was unusual for Led Zeppelin, which may have contributed to this San Francisco Examiner July 24th review. The main critique was the band felt disconnected from the music, while opening bands Judas Priest and Derringer were praised for their sets. Derringer got an ovation from the crowd. Going over the bootleg recording for my episode 1 summary, I felt it was too sunny for the sinister vibes of, say, No Quarter. They played with much passion, yet this is a sunset or night band, period. The same can be said about their 1973 Kezar Stadium show, but there was an upside to this setting. Near perfect lighting and conditions for some of the most iconic photographs of 1977, and to some extent from their latter-day career. Now, Jimmy Page was so thin that he had to wear a black shirt underneath, like April 10th at Chicago. Every song had visually striking poses and moments. The dragon suit was a photographer's delight, revealing some of the magic under the sun while realizing they were mortals after all. The same can be said for Robert, whose Nurses Do It Better shirt, along with the blouse he previously wore at Seattle, was that of an imposing messenger, celebrating the day in the green, capitalizing on their good fortune, total fan retain. Most of these shots could very well be live album covers, a fascinating collection that catches your attention every time. Jonesy went for the tracksuit jacket as he delighted fans with his famous triple neck and upright bass instruments. The other Zeppelin families were back home in England, but the Joneses were present at the show. Wife Maureen and Jonesy's daughters stood on the side of the stage, watching the band's secret weapon showcase his mighty skills. A vital support group and ground cable to keep his sanity. Bonham wore shades in the 1977 tracksuit as well. The tour's MVP enjoyed his time on stage. Master of percussion, drummer extraordinaire. The huge Stonehenge setting made the band look small from a distance. But the music was an absolute giant, like Jimmy's electric waves during his violin bow solo. Just like the movie, the song remained the same. Living colors, shiny surfaces. It looked like they finally managed to enjoy daylight, after all. The show was over by 5 p.m. Now, what I'm about to share is a compilation of events described in both Bill Graham's 1992 book and Peter Grant's Bring It On Home. It was 5:55 p.m. Peter Grant and John Binden walked up the concrete ramp. Bill Graham's staff security guard Jim Downey muttered, "Geez, it's a long way up that ramp." Grant took it as a jab at his weight. Binden didn't hesitate. He knocked Downey with a single punch. No one stepped in. Things were about to escalate. Peter Grant's son, Warren, rocking a Led Zeppelin t-shirt that day, tried to remove a band sign from a trailer dressing room. Security guard Jim Matsorkis noticed Warren had several in his hands and told them he couldn't do that and took them away. According to Bringing It Home, page 191, Warren said Matsorkis tried to grab the signs and shoved him. A witness claimed the 11-year-old allegedly lost his balance and fell. Warren went to his father. Peter reacted like any enraged former wrestler parent would and teamed up with tour manager Richard Cole, John Binden, and John Bonham. Bill Graham called a meeting with Matsorkis to try to cool things down. He chose a trailer for privacy to talk things over, but this was doomed from the start. An open space would have been better. Grant and Binden threw Graham out of the trailer. Security managed to pull Bonzo away. Next thing you knew, there was an impending war backstage. What followed was the brutal beating of Matsorkis. Outside, people heard the screams for help, a bloodbath of revenge with no impulse control. It was an enraged parent looking for justice, a tough spot to be in, and it was a multi-million rock and roll empire turned into a street fight, straight out of Peter Grant's beginnings and John Binden's violent London situations. Richard Cole stood guard outside with an aluminum pipe blocking anyone from entering. The incident raised many questions, including Peter Grant's ability to handle the 1980s of corporate sponsors, tighter grips, and civilized negotiations. His my way or the highway approach of the past had worked when the business was young. Now it was a sea of lawyers, accountants, and tabloid reporters. In pure survival mode, Jim Matsorkis somehow escaped. His face was covered in blood, desperately needing an ambulance. Page, Plant, and Jones were not close to the action, but realized something was up. Everyone was sent back to the hotel in their limos, but the damage was done, and there seemed to be unresolved matters from the previous 1975 Oakland dates that were cancelled.
He and Led Zeppelin had to cancel because he was on the island of Corfu, off of Greece, and we had sold out 2 outdoor dates like that, which was $1.3 million worth of tickets. And it was one of the few times I took my kids and we went river rafting up in Moab, Utah. On the 3rd day, there's a skywriting plane in Utah, in the middle of nowhere, writing out these letters, and one of my kids says, "Look at that," and it said B-I-L-L, and the letters in the C-A-L-L. Just said Bill Call up in the sky. Oh my God, my kids are with me, and I've got 4 sisters, and God only knows what it is. And I ran to the phone and I called the office here and I said, "Is it my family?" They said no, and I just said, "It's got to be Led Zeppelin." And they said no. Robert Plant had a car accident and broke his leg, and fractured one, broke the other one. The dates won't happen. 3 years later was the makeup date when we had the incident. But it's the same manager who, at the time of renegotiation, when we went through the expenses for the gig, at the bottom I said, well, X number of thousands of dollars we have to charge as an expense to this show, because 3 years ago at the cancellation we rented the facility, did all the advertising, sold all the tickets, refunded all the tickets. There's dollars involved in it. He said, well, that's not an expense for this show. I said, well, why not? He said, well, it was an act of God. Oh, that's not an expense.
Back at the hotel, Peter Grant and the staff called their lawyer, Steve Weiss, for help. Unlike the incident seen in The Song Remains the Same, this was serious, dead serious. Plans to board their plane and get out of California were on the table. They could escape jurisdiction and leave everything behind. They had done it back in June in Tampa, despite a come rain or shine ticket status out of a dangerous thunderstorm and riot. But this time, a different kind of storm was on the horizon. Zeppelin's camp told Graham to sign a waiver releasing them from any legal trouble so they could play the next day's show at Oakland. Bill Graham reached out to his lawyer, who warned that the signature might be worthless, as they could later claim it was forged under threat of financial loss. There were also other promoters in the States running ads for the upcoming gigs, July through August. The snowball effect of disturbing the force jeopardized the future of many pockets involved. Zeppelin's lawyer Steve Weiss arrived at Oakland Coliseum for a tension-packed meeting with Graham. Weiss had been present during Jimmy Page's signing to Atlantic in 1968, and now, almost 9 years later, he was at the doors of a possible headache and Zeppelin exile from America. The band refused to leave the hotel until Bill's signature was on the waiver. Graham claimed he feared a riot if the show was cancelled, so he signed. The question remains, what if he hadn't and instead refunded the tickets? The outcome would have been much different. When the Zeppelin finally arrived at the stadium, most of Graham's staff wanted Swan Song blood. How a fight didn't erupt that day remained a mystery, and a miracle really. For Robert Plant, it was one of the toughest gigs of his life, smiling to the crowd while knowing they were lucky to be alive. He tried to speak with Graham before the show, but the conversation went nowhere. Plant wore a black coat on the opening numbers, plus a white shirt as a peace motif. Jones followed with one of his standard 1977 white outfits. Bonham stuck to his tracksuit, alternating to a leather jacket and shades. Jimmy wore his black boots from earlier in the tour, white pants, and a beaded butterfly jacket he later used at the Arms concerts of 1983 and a promotional video for the firm's Radioactive. Guitar tech Ray Thomas was vital to Page's musical success, providing his talents before and during the shows. This was Ray at Oakland Coliseum, fine-tuning the double neck beast before Zeppelin played an American stage for the last time. There had been an alternate concert poster that didn't make the final cut, The Blue Angel by Stanley Mouse, available on eBay for $1,000. A strange swan song design for a swan song ending. The Zeppelin played an almost identical show to the 23rd with just Black Dog cut from the set. They began with The Song Remains the Same, featuring Robert's black coat with both Jimmy and Bonzo wearing shades. Roses were on stage, and the imposing Ludwig stainless steel kid stood tall as they tried to forget the backstage violence and a potential lawsuit. Sick Again was next, and they looked rather small on that huge Stonehenge stage. Props to the designers, it served their music well. The band stayed close to each other, watching out for cues. Robert looked at the horizon, wondering about their future. Flowers, yet again, it was hello goodbye, but they couldn't possibly know. All they could do was play rock and roll and hope for the best. Nobody's Fault But Mine followed, and Jones held his lethal bass position. Over the Hills and Far Away loosened things up, Page in classic rockstar mode. Jones moved on to the keys for Since I've Been Loving You, and the day-that contrast of No Quarter, featuring a sudden onstage dancer who joined Robert Plant and was later held over John Bonham's head. Much needed fun on a day like that. 10 Years Gone was next for some triple neck and Telecaster duets. John Bonham put a leather jacket for Battle of Evermore. Yet again, the enormous stage looked like a time capsule, an alternate Stonehenge. The place for Goodbye America. Tambourine, mandolin, and mandolin duckface moments. White suit, acoustic guitars, and Robert singing about mountains that trembled and shook. Going to California was a statement, the irony of fate, flowers, acoustic guitars, and Jones switching to the upper neck, a mandolin. Brown Rata Stomp and Black Country Woman featured Jones on his iconic upright bass, back to the vibes of the early 70s. A quick setup change came before they embarked on Trample Underfoot. Jimmy got a smoke break. They laughed like the greatest 70s rock band they were. Ray Thomas helped Jimmy get ready for White Summer Black Mountain Side, followed by Kashmir. Page's guitar solo explored the riddles of sound. His violin bow commanded, while Bonzo wore a raincoat of sorts. Aikido's Last Stand prepared the epic mood for Stairway to Heaven, where Jimmy raised his double neck movie style. All I Love was an all-guitar performance and backing vocals, and Rock and Roll closed the evening. A short 2-hour show, Jumping Page included. The Last Song in America, The Ceremony Over, An Evening in Oakland. The band got paid and left the arena, back to the hotel. Bill Graham reached out to the police, who waited before making their move.
A bunch of kids looking for
2. It holds without stickiness.
a world-class
Make yourself happy. Staying drier is nicer.
because we do what you do before you do it.
Monday, July 25th, a sea of policemen, SWAT team included, raided San Francisco's Hilton Hotel looking for Bonham, Grant, Bindon, and Richard Cole. Misdemeanor arrest warrants in hand, they wouldn't leave until they found them. This meant going over 50 registered names until they found their 4 suspects. John Paul Jones had already planned a Midwest trip, motorhome rent included, so he decided to leave earlier than expected, got his family out, and left San Francisco. Newspapers that day ran positive reviews for the Zeppelin's Oakland series, but that would quickly change into troubled headlines. The colorful memories turned into black and white stage shots, a sea of fans that would never see the band in America ever again, nor, according to this article, Page coaxing eerie sounds out of his axe, John Bonham rifling pop gun drum rolls, John Paul Jones looking confident, and the overt sexuality of Plant's pelvic thrusts. I personally enjoy the part where the reporter said, quote, "Unlike Ted Nugent and other rock entrepreneurs of the same ilk, Page uses these devices as means of coloration, subtle hits of his keen sense of melody and testaments to his refined sense of theater. Nothing like a good music journalist with guts to speak his mind." An estimated 54,000 fans attended Led Zeppelin's final show in America. Bonham, Grant, Bindon, and Cole posted a $250 bail and packed their bags for the upcoming New Orleans show. In the meantime, newspapers worked overtime for what followed. A $2 million civil lawsuit was filed against John Bonham, Peter Grant, Richard Cole, and John Bindon. That's 4 Oakland Coliseums worth of ticket sales. The lawsuit also named a Dutch corporation called SNL Enterprises. This brought unwanted attention to a tight-lipped organization that handled delicate tax structures and more. While the company's name appeared on concert posters throughout Zeppelin's tour, it remained a low-key element until now. Neither Cole nor Bindon had contracts with SNL, but the whole situation compromised the band's economic foundations. Despite the famous rock promoters sounding the alarm with police and reporters in search of justice, Bill Graham was not a part of the lawsuit. We don't know exactly why, but there are a couple of theories. Dealing with assault and battery wasn't a part of the concert staff's job description. This was an external act that couldn't be foreseen, a force majeure event that challenged normal rock and roll procedures. The staff wasn't prepared to act like the Hells Angels at Altamont 1969, so the events of 1977 forced them to fend for themselves. Also, this wasn't a personal attack on Bill Graham himself, so he could steer the pot all he wanted, trying to gain momentum in favor of the plaintiffs. But in the end, it was up to a security guard, a stagehand, and a production manager to face the music, with unnecessary targets on their backs that grew larger with every new article. Tuesday, July 26th was filled with Zeppelin headlines across the country. The band wished it was about their music, but no. As the stories ran, Robert Plant got a devastating phone call past noon. His son Carrick passed away at the age of 5. Robert, along with Bonzo, left home to England immediately, where Birmingham's Evening Mail talked about a top rock drummer arrested. A fight with stagehands was described, but they specified that neither Page, Jones, nor Plant were involved. Back in America, 1,000 articles were put in print. Here's a small selection. Chicago Tribune, 4 arrested in a Zeppelin fight backstage. The article stated Cole and Bindon were locked on 2 accounts of battery. Everyone tried to guess what Peter Grant's age was. Contra Costa Times. Martinez News Gazette changed the title to Led Zeppelin duo involved in alleged altercation with stagehands. Oakland Tribune read backstage fracas. Peter's age was set at 42, and they mentioned the Hilton Hotel arrests, plus a summary of the incident out of Grant's son removing wood plaques from a trailer. Oregon Journal with a picture of Alice Cooper. Redlands Daily told its readers that a production manager was slugged by Bonham over a sign in the dressing room compound. Santa Cruz's Sentinel put Led Zeppelin drummer and associates spent 3 hours in jail. The Berkeley Gazette assumed the entire group was held, while the Californian claimed Zeppelin drummer arrested. They shed light on a conflict with stagehand James Downey and James Matsorkis, severely beaten after a failed peace meeting. Virginia's The Daily Progress offered a steak break right next to Led Zeppelin's drummers seized. The Fresno Bee knew how to count, it seems, with 2 from Led Zeppelin arrested. The Los Angeles Times joined the frenzy, thus confirming everyone in the industry would notice. The Modesto Bee was a bit nicer, not mentioning the band's name on the title. The San Francisco Examiner had battery rap for 2 with Zeppelin Group. Oakland Police Lieutenant confirmed the arrests. Both Downey and Matsorkis were mentioned. Here's both the San Mateo Times and Times Herald Vallejo. The word jail sold more newspapers. The Wichita Beacon's title was confusing. Were they implying that Zeppelin 4, the album, was charged with assault? Wednesday, July 27th, California's Daily Times Advocate included heated Bill Graham's statements on Led Zeppelin. Quote, "I would doubt very much that the group wants to play under my auspices. If they did, I could never, in good conscience, do so unless they had a different drummer and a different manager. There is such a thing as human dignity and moral boundary. They went beyond it. It all relates to power. When any individual feels might makes right, you have to try and stop that theory. I'd rather take the legal way than the physical way." The San Francisco Examiner made matters worse with a small article that revealed the names on the lawsuit, including the Dutch corporation SNL Enterprises. In retrospect, it seemed extreme to look for justice at the expense of possibly compromising Led Zeppelin's business altogether, especially when Plant, Page, and Jones were not involved at all. It was one thing to go to court over specific assault charges, but another to expose sensitive information that compromised a rock and roll band to its core. British media didn't go for these headlines and pretty much stopped the Oakland coverage. American papers, on the other hand, kept running articles through August and September that seemed quite distasteful now, considering Robert Plant was mourning his son's passing. The last thing he needed was bad press. There should be a limit to how far journalists can go for the same wound. We can only speculate what fueled the desire of some to watch Led Zeppelin burn to the ground. All of a sudden, an entire tour was portrayed as negative, yet it made millions, and many hands got their payday. No More Day in the Green shows were held that year, but Bill Graham resumed his rock concert business with shows like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and yes, both hosted at Oakland's indoor venue right next to the big stadium. So what happened to the lawsuit? Letters were sent to the US Senate looking to ban the Zeppelin from America. Their work visas expired in late 1977, and authorities would now keep a close eye on their activities. The band's lawyers tried to reach an out-of-court settlement for the civil suit for an alleged sum of $37,500 in December, but the deal was off by January. February 1978, the song remains the same, was still rocking theaters in the US. Bonham, Benton, Cole, and Grant were put on probation and received suspended sentences. This made headlines on different newspapers, but at a much smaller scale than Oakland. The civil suit was still pending, and the risk of exposing Zeppelin's finances had their lawyers working overtime. Then finally, on December 4th, 1978, an agreement was reached. All three men got an alleged sum of $50,000, just as Led Zeppelin finished their In Through the Outdoor recording sessions in Sweden. The album was definitely their way back into the game after trials, tribulation, and tragedy. It was an outdoor return. So what was Led Zeppelin's last ever show in America like? Here's an audio summary of the concert where you can tell it certainly got to Bonzo's mind in parts. But like every Zeppelin concert, we will find highlights and fascinating trails all along. I hope you enjoyed this two-part series and stay tuned for the next chapter as I will dive deep into New Orleans, 1977, and the show that never was.
But it's nice to see the sun again. Come on.
Surprisingly what sound can do, I suppose.
We thank Bill Graham for putting on a most spectacular... I think he built the place especially for rock concerts.
We just keep playing. this to Bill Graham. It's called No Quarter.
We don't know who she was, sorry.
Thank you very much, the invisible dancer.
As puberty ends, as you become more and more aware of yourself, and you people from this part of California have always been very aware of yourselves, as you no doubt know, and you find that you have an attraction for a girl or a boy, and you blow it, because you always blow the first one. Not very well, but you do.
At this point in the proceedings, we introduce to you
close range John Henry Bonham, known to his friends as John the Divine, John the Placid. This is for Dr. Larry Badgley, who's been helping us out throughout the tour on our cuts and bruises and abrasions and the rigours of time. To our GP, our medical man, Larry Badgley. I haven't got his phone number, but this is for you, Larry. Dedicated to when we 1960 I think it was 68 when we first came to the Fillmore. It might have been 69. There's an amazing atmosphere about the whole of San Francisco and all the surrounding areas, something that you couldn't really experience anywhere else but in this town. And when you go back to England, dear England, you look back to California and you think about all the dreams that sounds a bit mushy, doesn't it? All the dreams that you had and all the dreams that everybody else had. So I guess this song relates to those days and the extensions are still with us. Never let them tell you that they all are the same. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's terribly, terribly hard. From playing in the daylight. So unusual to do. It's really stimulating. 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 Voice, voice, voice. a real treat. It's 2 days of daylight. I ain't seen so many smiles for a long time. It's been a good day.